So Trump is calling out Kamala Harris and talking about her policy on inflation. I know Kamala Harris policy on inflation. So I think it's only fair that we at least bring this up here. And let's go ahead and pull it up here. I found this to be very interesting. So let's first play this video from CNN. Folks, brace yourself.
You unveiled some economic policies last week.
Yeah.
Can you explain how you're going to pay for those? And can you give us a sense of what other policies you want to unveil going forward?
Sure.
So this has to deal with Kamala Harris's economic policy. Now, Trump calls her out on it. And right now, the press is asking her, well, about her policy and how she's going to pay for some of the things that she supposedly wants to implement during her administration should she win the election.
Sure. Well, I mean, you just look at it in terms of what we are talking about, for example, around children and the child tax credit and extending the EITC. It's at $6,000 for the first year of a child's life. The return on that investment in terms of what that will do and what it will pay for will be tremendous. We've seen it when we did it in the first year of our administration. We reduced child poverty by over 50%. So that's a lot of the work. And then what we're doing in terms of the tax credits, we know that there's a great return on that investment. And when we increase home ownership in America, what that means in terms of increasing the tax base, not to mention property tax base, what that does to fund schools, again, return on investment. I think it's a mistake for any person who talks about public policy to not critically evaluate how you measure the return on investment. When you are strengthening neighborhoods, strengthening communities, and in particular the economy of those communities, and investing in a broad-based economy, everybody benefits, and it pays for itself.
None of that made any goddamn sense. I didn't understand a single thing that she was saying. And look, hey, you know what the rules are. We're going to play the game. Now, anything can happen between when this show is being watched right now or when we clip this segment. But folks, here, still no policy. Still asking for money. No policy. I see nothing on inflation. So, of course, you know, because it's a back and forth, Trump blasts Harris, horrible choice of words, on inflation. Because after all, the main front and center issue is always going to be the economy. Right now, Americans are struggling. Home ownership is a myth. Small business owners are struggling. Who knows how many buildings and small business areas are going to still be open, especially in regards to just how expensive things are getting. So, U.S. Republican nominee Donald Trump has hammered, again, horrible choice of words, Vice President Kamala Harris over the Biden administration's record on inflation and likened a campaign pledge she recently made to rein in price growth to measures used in communist nations. Now, I've been seeing the memes all over social media. Listen, Trump voters, conservatives, libertarians, Kamala is a corporatist. She's not a communist. I think, look, I get it. I get it. There's always that back and forth, that antagonism between diehard red voters and diehard vote blue no matter who people. But look, in regards towards defining both parties are neoliberalists. Both parties are corporatists. Both parties are owned by the top 1%. Please use the thesaurus right here and find different words. Use a dictionary. I know. Controversial statements. So anyways, speaking on Saturday at a rally in northeastern Pennsylvania, the Republican nominee mocked his rival for her vow to pass the first federal ban on price gouging on food if she is elected president. Right. Yesterday, Kamala laid out a so-called economic plan, saying that she's going to lower the cost of food and housing starting on day one. But day one for Kamala was 3.5 years ago. So why didn't she do it then? Which is a very good question to bring up. And it's a very good thing that the campaign should be focusing on instead of, childish back and forth. But nonetheless, what do you expect from our politicians? They don't really care. Earlier this week, Harris pointed to the cost of items such as bread and ground beef, claiming that large food manufacturers are boosting profits while accusing some grocery chains of not passing along savings to customers. The Republican nominee blasted, again, horrible choice of words, his rival's socialist approach to price controls, calling her Comrade Kamala, and adding that she's gone full communist. No, she's not, and I can assure you she's not going to do a single thing to fix the inflation because all politicians have sworn to fix it. But isn't it fantastic that a lot of members in the United States Senate and House are actually able to do insider trading? Isn't it fantastic that they're able to get corrupted and be bought out by lobby groups? If they actually wanted to fix, the inflation, the economy, both Democratic and Republican lawmakers in Washington, D.C. would have done it decades ago. It's almost as if they want to keep us poor. But hey, we only can keep on warning people for so long that the two-party system doesn't care. Continuing on, it will cause rationing, hunger, and skyrocketing prices, just like the Biden-Harris administration's Inflation Reduction Act, which is one of the great scams of all time. Inflation has been so bad, it's gone up more than 50%. They say 30, 40, many more people are devastated. Trump stressed that the radical liberal policies of recent years under the administration of President Joe Biden have caused horrific inflation that has decimated the middle class and gutted the finances of millions of American families. They have no idea they're grossly incompetent people. Real incomes are down by over $2,000 a year. Think of that. Minimum and ours up 5 times that amount, more than 5 times that amount. Her price hikes have cost a typical household a total of $28,000, and that's called the Kamala Harris inflation tax. She was there for everything. So price growth spiked to 9.1%. Oh, Jesus. Goodness gracious, that's terrible. Year on year in June 2022, before beginning to subsidize the Federal Reserve embarked on a series of interest rate hikes. Nevertheless, annual inflation has remained at over 3% before dropping 2.9% this past July. The first time it's dipped below the 3% mark since March of 2021. But see, the thing is, when we're looking at Kamala's policies, when we're looking at the inflation, we have to remember she doesn't have a plan right now. And today's the 19th. Today's the first day of the DNC convention. Ideally, and let's just refresh this page right here. I am seeing nothing on inflation. But then again, too, I'm seeing nothing on any other policy. And I'm going to pull up this video here because once again, we see the vote blue, no matter who people talking down to pro-Palestinian supporters who are, again, asking for a ceasefire, asking for, humanitarian aid to get into into Gaza so that the men, women, and children aren't starving to death. So here, watch when a simple question is brought up, how quick Kamala supporters quickly boo them into silence.
Vice President Kamala, will you stop sending billions of dollars to Israel? Please start funding our communities. Spend money on healthcare. Spend money on the communities in the United States. People in Gaza are being bombed and killed. Babies are being starved to death.
Our democracy is living hand.
Yes, you denounce the
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe.
The sheep still keep buying. The sheep still keep buying to the commands. It's going to be very interesting to see how liberals respond to the numerous protests that are going to be taking place here in Chicago. Listen, Democrats, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but there was at one point you had a large coalition supporting you. Since then, it is heavily fractured, and right now, everyone's still in the euphoria of Kamala being the nominee. Sooner or later, Trump and her are going to have a debate. Sooner or later, more people are going to be looking into Kamala's record. And sooner or later, soon, probably, much sooner than we think, people are going to realize that, Kamala's plan, there is no plan for anything. It's just more of the same. It's a click, copy, paste of the Biden administration. That's it. I want things to be better. And I would hope that someday we do get leaders that actually care about voters and our struggle and the things that we are going through. However, what I'm noticing here is nothing but more of the same. And especially when you have all-star stellar speeches like this.
Compare my plan with what Donald Trump intends to do. He plans to give billionaires massive tax cuts year after year. And he plans to cut corporate taxes by over $1 trillion, even as they pull in record profits. And that's on top of the $2 trillion tax cut he already signed into law when he was president, which, by the way, overwhelmingly went to the wealthiest Americans and corporations and exploded the national deficit. You know, I think that if you want to know who someone cares about, look who they fight for.
Okay. Now, Kamala, you were VP for 3.5 years. Since then, voters have been struggling day in, day out for those 3.5 years trying to make ends meet. And it hasn't worked. So many Americans are struggling to put food on the table. And yet when we look at policy, I see no policy. I see no policy. And I don't care if it's the first day of the DNC convention. Okay, I could understand maybe why a campaign website wouldn't have it for maybe 1 or 2 days. Anything more than 2 days, this is an insult. Yet in comparison, and no, it's not in support, but when we look at platform and policies, look who has them. You have Trump's campaign, and then you have the Kamala's campaign. And I am not seeing a single thing in regards to policy on our campaign website. Now, anything could happen between now and when we, premiere this recording and when we clip this segment as well. But we're getting nothing in return. No investment back. Democrats, what's your excuse at this point? And you know what? We're going to be on the ground. We're going to be interviewing people who are going to be protesting at the DNC convention. And we're going to be seeing and actually reading the cultural temperature in regards towards how voters are feeling towards the Democrats and what this convention means to them. So stay tuned to Hard Lens Media, folks. This is only the beginning.